Welcome back. It is Tuesday night, and that means you have the Tuesday night crew for Getting Defensive, brought to you by GridironRatings.com. I am your host, Kraig. With me, as always, we have Gary and James, and we have a guest that you've seen on 3 or 4 shows anyway in the past couple weeks here. We have Mace Riney back with us. You can find him at Cali King 49er17 on Twitter. Mace, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back. I'm ready to get to the second half of this stuff and run it down.
We're excited to have you. And James, you got a buddy on the West Coast here tonight on the show. You're not alone. Both of you got the sun shining back behind you while Gary and I are in the dark here in the middle and the eastern part of the country. But how are you, James?
I'm doing well. I very much like how the bottom half of the screen is bright and very well lit, and the top half's a little more dungeonous and cavey due to the lighting situation you guys have.
No, we love our 70s wood paneling and brick walls. You probably want to flip it if you're trying to look at a pretty picture or something. But anyway, Gary, speaking of pretty pictures, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing wonderful, gentlemen. Let's get these rookies done and kind of move on for a little bit after this, folks.
Yeah, we're going to be getting into the second half of our top 32 ranked rookies. This is, again, a consensus ranking. We have the four of us head ranked, and then Brandon and JJ and who else am I missing? Someone else ranked, and of course it's escaping me who it was. Maybe it was just the five of us. That tells you how my night's going. Anyway, there's a group of us. It isn't just us on here. So when you see discrepancies, you're like, well, that doesn't quite add up to see how, this 17th person, they have two people here both lower than him or something. There's a group of us. You're not going to see everyone's rankings on there. So if you want to hear specific rankings from any one of us, you can feel free to reach out to us on Twitter, ask us questions in the comments, which we love. And with that, we're going to get into the news because there is a little bit here, and don't want to start off the show with a downer, but for IDP folks out there, Jeff Gladney passed away, cornerback of the Arizona Cardinals, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings. So just want to say our condolences and thoughts go out to his family and friends. It's a terrible situation for anyone, especially a young man, to have to go through. Other news that matters a little bit more for your leagues, probably Aaron Donald, name you've heard before. He says he is, quote, at peace with retiring if he is not able to get a contract extension of his liking on a contender. So, Gary, we brought this up a little bit after the Super Bowl, and you kind of guffawed at me when I mentioned that he said something about it. You taking it a little bit more seriously now?
I'm just going to – I don't give a shit where the guy plays, I mean – so
if he plays is the question.
Well, right. So that's what my point was getting to. So I'm not concerned about his value as long as he plays. That's a lot of smoke, a lot of puff. Somebody's going to pay him. I would say the odds are he'll be playing. Someone's going to throw a bunch of money at this dude real quick. So it's still worth the gamble for me. I'm going to swing for the fence that he's going to play. And I think that if he gets a contract, he's probably going to get signed 2-3 years more. I'll be happy, even in a dynasty league. I mean, he might slip a little bit, but overall, I mean, I'm swinging for the fence there. It's crazy not to, in my opinion.
James, are you still drafting him as a defensive lineman 1 in redraft leagues despite this?
Yeah, I mean, it's classic offseason talk. There's probably some actual, underlying truth to it, and that, Donald can leverage his situation as the best guy available into making sure he plays for contender and he gets paid as he's on the back half of his career. But at the same time, he should play, he should get paid. And in a world where things don't go well and he somehow sits out and we have a Le'Veon Bell situation on the defensive side of the ball, that's a risk I'm willing to take given his upside. He's that much better than everyone else on that interior defensive line. And sure, he's a little bit older, but I kind of, have to just deal with it because he's that dang good.
Mace, any concerns for you?
So about a week ago, I had a startup Dynasty IDP league. I drafted him, I think, in the beginning of the second round or the back end of the first. And I put him on the trade block today just to see if I would get anything. Not even a garbage offer. So I really think everyone's just kind of sitting there waiting. Yeah, no, exactly. Normally I would get something, man. Just someone just throwing something at the wall to see. I did not get anything. This is a pretty active league from what I've seen so far. So as far as what he's saying, like Gary said, he's going to get paid. I feel like someone's going to pay him. Someone's going to find a spot for him. There's no way that you can't until he starts to show that his play is diminishing, but he hasn't at all. It just keeps on going up. So I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid just yet.
Fair enough. Well, we do have an actual signing, one more, and it's sort of the interior defensive lineman news for the day here. Akeem Hicks, who had some fantasy relevance, certainly in those interior lineman and defensive tackle type leagues, signed a 1 year, I think it was $10 million, someone quote me if I'm wrong, deal with Tampa Bay. And you kind of look at what they've put together there now with probably Logan Hall, Vita Vea, and then Akeem Hicks. It's like, I mean, it isn't the same as Ndamukong Suh, but still a nice defensive line there. James, how are you feeling about that signing from an IDP perspective, though?
Yeah, I mean, Hicks is your classic old veteran who probably should get some relevance in certain bye weeks and perhaps a season long if you're a little bit deeper, especially on the interior line. But he's also the kind of guy who, in a dynasty league, you have absolutely no thought process on thinking he's going to last and matter more than 1 year. But for this calendar year, he's going to be relatively valuable in those interior defensive line leagues. I think he's going to fill that Suh role, probably even maybe a little more so on the stat sheet relative to what Suh did on the field. And so I like it. I think it's a good little landing spot for him. And he's someone on my radar. Today I'm probably thinking a lot more upside, especially Dynasty, as I mentioned. But he's not someone to just forget about and say he's chalked and done when you look at the interior defensive line.
It was 1 year up to $10 million. He's going to be turning 33 later this year. Mace, how you feeling about that signing?
I mean, it's good for them. It's a good veteran presence, like James was saying. I don't know if anyone plays redraft best ball or just a best ball league. Yeah, maybe I'll look at him for that. But yeah, like James said in Dynasty, I'm not licking my chops or anything. I mean, he's a good Band-Aid maybe for a year for your team, but that's probably about it for me.
You feel like getting defensive yet, Gary?
I'm actually going to bump him up a little bit. I mean, it's not like, crazy or anything, but I'm thinking about doing that in redrafts. But as far as it goes, he's not going very far. And I'm talking deeper leagues. So in standard formats, maybe depth of something if you're, starting a small amount of guys, or if you're at that 4, 5, 6 range or something, depending.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our news and notes for tonight. Before we get into the second half of our 32 rookies, I want to thank you all for watching us on YouTube. Make sure you have your button subscribed. Gridiron, that sounded weird, but the Gridiron Ratings YouTube, and hit the notifications. Like the show if you like it. If you don't, you want to scream at Gary in the comments, he'll respond to you. So throw whatever you want at Gary. He'll get back to you. Yep. Same thing over at gridironratings.com. Make sure you go there so you can see all those great articles being dropped. And if you're on the YouTube as us older folks, like Gary, the YouTubes, you can see the Chop Shop, you can see Rider Dynasty, all the great shows that we got here, including another episode of Getting Defensive on Thursday nights.
It used to be the picture box. But anyways.
When films got words, they called them talkies. I think that's where the silent film. But now we're going way past probably anyone who's actually paying attention to this. So we're going to get into the actual meat of the show here tonight. Again, if you didn't see it, you can go onto the Gridiron Ratings YouTube and go back to Thursday's show where they went over these top 16, again, consensus ratings among our people who had rated rookies, IDP rookies, clearly, for this 2022 draft class. But this next group is what we are going to get to here, and we're going to leave it up here for you to take a look at a little bit and ponder. But before we get into sort of I don't know if we're going to get really defensive about these, but Gary, anything really stick out to you in your mind when you're just looking at this list and where one name fell, or a name that you don't see that even made it, perhaps?
I just want to mention too, real quick, man, just to recap what we covered on. You guys see Heat 1, the last show. Go to our YouTube, our picture box, and check it out. And then, I just want to mention real quick. The guys when was consensus five of us between a couple of shows. Mace has been on both, but either way, it doesn't matter. We just want to let you know this is kind of a balanced format, Dynasty only. I know in the past when we've talked about redraft or when we've talked about rookies and Dynasty, we threw in some redraft information. So we're focusing it at a rookie level and rookie Dynasty. That's what these were about. And a lot of it boiled down to the positions. So that's all I wanted to do was recap that real quick in case you haven't seen Heat 1. I hope you do. Please. So somebody sticking out. I think I like Malcolm Rodriguez a lot better than some others do. That might be Jeff's fault too. He kind of put him on my radar a few weeks back, but I mean, what are your guys' feelings about him? Giving Barnes that much credit?
The more I was, go ahead. Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead, Mace.
Okay, sorry. So as I started getting towards the end of the rankings the other day, as I'm looking at them and I'm reviewing over people, I put a couple names out on Twitter and started to get some film back. And I'm looking at these guys and I'm like, dude, why do I have these guys ranked so low? And if we get to talking about those people, I'll say it. But yeah, Rodriguez is definitely one of those guys. Also, Arnold E. I don't want to mess up his last name. Thank you. Ebiketie, yes. Him as well. Also, a little bit of love for Channing Tindall, but we'll get to that later. So, yeah, little mixed emotions for me personally.
Yeah, for me, Rodriguez did not crack my top 32. He was actually my first honorable mention at 33, and I kind of feel the same way Mace does in that I think I have a little bit of ranker's remorse. I think he probably should fit in there just because I expect Detroit to be like Detroit was last year, which is rotational and not very good and just kind of, hit and miss in terms of you wanting to start them, being able to predict what their value is going to be throughout that whole linebacking core. But at the same time, he's going to have an opportunity to actually step up and probably play, which, for a 6th round pick is relatively rare, as well as a 5th round and even a 4th round. So his opportunities there and the ability to step up and show up can happen easily in year 1 for a LB 6th round player. So it's not like we have to sit and wait on a late round pick who's not going to attain any more value while he's sitting on the bench. You're going to get your results right away. So I think I kind of underranked and undervalued there as well. So he's sitting at 31st, and I really think if we went together and re-ranked these, he'd slide up a little bit. So to Gary's kind of point, he feels a little bit not enough of wanting to get him as high as he really should be.
I think that's one of the things when you're looking at these, when you're having different people rank him, even with the same idea in mind of, all right, Dynasty sort of balanced format, you're going to run into sort of that. I know you talked about on the Thursday show, and I'm not going to completely reiterate all of it, but how you value positions matters a lot for when you're ranking and how you're ranking these guys. If you view those elite edge rushers as more important than the linebackers, we've sort of seen that true 3-down linebacker become more and more rare, and you think, well, these guys are going to be in a rotation. I can probably pick up depth later. True safety, some people like waiting till the end to get a safety because they feel they're really replaceable, while others want to get a safety early that's a young guy that they feel is going to be able to just step in there and be the guy for a number of years, like a Kyle Hamilton, perhaps. Some people have very split opinions on him, I've seen on Twitter lately. So it really does, and it's hard to get into that on here for each one of us, but I wanted to bring that up because there weren't any in the top 16. And here, I think we have 2 cornerbacks. We got McDuffie there at 28 and Ahmad Gardner at 30. I personally just find it really hard to rank cornerbacks, period. Again, a lot of times the best cornerbacks don't end up being the best for fantasy unless you have like crazy increased scoring for those big plays and stuff, because usually the not as good cornerbacks or those people opposite of the studs get targeted more. That's why I have even a hard time throwing a cornerback in here. Not that we're going to get into it a whole lot. I didn't put in quarterback in my top 32 just because I have that problem figuring out where they go. But Gary, I didn't look at yours specifically, but how do you feel about ranking cornerbacks as rookies?
Well, technically, I mean, I did it in this process because I just felt that they fell where they did, I mean, it's 32 of them, I don't know beyond that if there's anything really viable. So, I mean, I'm sure there are a couple of borderline ones beyond 32, But I just felt like that they, at this point, I'm giving dynasty rookie owners what they're looking for and going ahead and including them in this process this time.
James, I think you and I both, out of the four of us on here tonight, didn't have a cornerback in here. You kind of have the same mindset where it's just too hard to place these guys when they're rookies.
I went through and I ranked pretty much everyone. So I did a top 75, even though we only see our top 32.
Yeah.
And of those, I didn't have a cornerback crack the top 40. And it's what you've said, which is, positional ranking and positional eligibility and just what you think of when it comes to building your roster and how you want to rank appropriately. And for me, you should not be investing in rookie cornerbacks relative to other rookies when you have the same opportunity cost to invest, because they just have such variance, and their high-end variance isn't that great of a reward relative to getting high-end variance out of an edge rusher or even a defensive tackle, and especially a linebacker and a safety. So to me, they're just not really worth investing in early. And when I say early, I mean within your top 32 defensive players. So it's really kind of at all. It's just not worth my time, so to speak. You see a lot of guys who are first-round cornerbacks who just never find relevancy, far more so than any other position. So I just don't want to invest there. I'd rather spend, my lottery ticket type picks, down in that 24 to 32 range on a position that I think could just reap better rewards if I do hit.
Gary is ready to fight over there. You want to get defensive, Gary? Or just
all right, come on, man. I mean, it's cornerback, and I agree. All the way through this, I usually never, I believe in 100% for one, not even putting him in my lineup. But for two, if I need a designated one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick one up. I'm just not going to carry any depth. I'm going to stream them. I'm going to do what I have to do. So I just wanted to go with the dynasty aspect. Top 75 is pretty steep because you got to give some kind of credit. There are people too in IDP plays. So I just went ahead and I did that.
We do have a question here, Gary, and I'm going to throw it to you because I believe Henry had been on the show asking questions last week, Thursday as well. So thank you for tuning in, asking about whether these are defensive tackle or D-end or just straight defensive lineman. Scoring system. We didn't have an exact set scoring system. It was just trying to balance across the positions is what we had said. And or are the DL versus linebacker scoring same or different?
This is the general DL covered just from our aspect at true designated positions. So, I mean, it's kind of one all in one to me. I don't know what you guys think.
I think it's just more about spreading the awareness of the players and what they can do for your roster, because we have 3-4 personalities here talking. I mean, I brought up best ball. We're talking dynasty. We're talking redraft. It's just we're kind of rolling with the punches here. Like when I saw the 32, I was like, okay, I have to rank these 32 guys for these guys. So that's what my mindset was. So yeah.
Interesting.
So, well, I personally don't mind if a guy's like a McDuffie who could possibly be in the nickel role. I might throw a flyer out there and try to be ahead of the curve because you're starting to see nickelbacks become more aggressive. They're blitzing. They're doing different things. So they're kind of like a tweener between I don't want to say they're a tweener like a linebacker, but they're out there on the edge. They're doing things. They're making moves. So like I said, to get ahead of the curve and throw something. I mean, obviously not in the first 3 rounds of a strict IDP draft, but I don't mind spending a late round pick on Trent McDuffie.
Yeah, in terms of my building process, I generally, when we do have a more guideline outline as opposed to a very specific set of things, is I'm thinking we've got 2 defensive linemen, 2 linebacker, 2 defensive backs, and 2 flex. So in terms of needing a strict defensive tackle, I did not rank accordingly with that, which is why you don't really see any true strict defensive tackles in my top 32. And that, could be a fault. It could not be a fault. But in general, those defensive tackles aren't going to hold value like those defensive ends in a balanced format because they're not getting as many sacks and not getting as many big plays. So that's how my thought process is. You can go back, you can take a look at our interior defensive line podcast where we did that last week. And I went very into depth on what I think of all of those players, which is I don't have the best thing to say about them, but that's because you never really have great things to say about interior defensive linemen to start because they take time. So there's plenty of talent there. It's just going to take time for that to develop. Whereas those edge rushers, those guys can develop much more quickly. And in a dynasty aspect, I'd like to hit my reward a little bit sooner.
And that, folk, is why we call it getting defensive. He countered. Hey, man, I mean, this is perfect. This is exactly why I like having 3-4 guys on, Kraig, is, simple fact of different opinions. Everybody out there's looking, and everybody out there is going to pick somebody's method. I don't expect anybody to just jump on our bandwagon as a whole. I'm expecting them to say, oh, I like James. I like his philosophy. Same thing. I suspect that's got to happen, right?
I would assume so, yeah.
Kraig, you awake, man?
Well, I don't know who you're talking to specifically.
I guess.
Sure, of course it'll happen. I mean, you're going to see people on shows.
I was just wondering.
It's good to question everyone's process that, like, how did you reach to the conclusion that you got to, and see if it makes sense to you, or if you don't agree, if you can dig into it and find out why. That's always good. Like, he says, Henry, again, I don't even roster cornerbacks ever. A lot of leagues you probably don't have to. When he's talking about a league, 2 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, 2 DBs, and one has 2 flex, another has 1 flex. Most of those you probably only have in any given year. If you're really thinking about it, 10 cornerbacks you'd even really consider to roster, and trying to predict who those are ahead of time. You could probably get 3 to 5 of those figured out, and the rest of them it's just going to be a crapshoot, because you'll have guys for years like Mike Hilton when he was in Pittsburgh. He was a fine cornerback that you could actually play as a defensive back in leagues because of how they used him. Now, you're going to be able to find that all the time? Obviously not. Sometimes you're going to find a Marlon Humphrey who's going to have years as an elite cornerback, but because of how he's used all over the field, he isn't really used just as a cornerback. And same thing with Jalen Ramsey at times. So, again, knowing your league, your scoring, your format, something we preach on here probably every show. Take these
example right there is those 2 DL. Yep. The example right there is those 2 DL. I mean, with that kind of a lineup, I'm not looking to start a defensive tackle unless it's Aaron Donald, Buckner, or Simmons. Other than that, and that's in depth, I hope. Maybe not Arnold because of the sacks, but in an overall situation, you're going to probably go after your defensive ends at that position.
All right. Well, speaking of getting defensive, because we're about halfway through the show here, we're going to get into some of these disagreements that we had and just where we had players ranked. We took sort of the larger gaps, and Gary usually fits somewhere in between on these, so he can come down as the arbiter of justice or whatever when he wants to, and determine.
I got lucky, Mace. Remember we did all that last time?
Yeah,
I wasn't in any of these 5 Kraig picked.
I had no idea. Straight up,
these are just the largest gaps.
Hey, wait for it.
What we got here is a failure to communicate.
I don't know who gave Gary a soundboard, but he's got to update some of these quotes.
I get a Christmas present, huh?
Be Charlie Chaplin saying something on here.
Yeah, sound that bad? I wanted to see what it sounded like.
It sounds fine. I'm just trying to figure it out. So the first one we have here again. So this is the back half of our 32. First one up, Drake Jackson, ranked 18th overall. Mace, you're gonna go first and try to sell us on him because you had him 13th overall.
I feel like he gets a bad rap. He's on arguably the best front 7 in football. He's coming into a great position. This guy has bend like no other guy in the class, I feel like. He's a great run defender. He could start in the rotation and make his way up. What it came down for me is the guys I have behind him, they either have less of an opportunity, they're injured, or they're just drafted in the later rounds. So I feel like he can make more of an immediate impact than a lot of people are giving him credit for. And I'm seeing him fall in the place of like a guy like what's his name, Maji Sanders.
Sanders, yep.
Yeah. I'm seeing him go undrafted with players like him, and I feel like I like Sanders a lot, but I feel like just his position and the way that he plays, the defensive coordinator D'Amico Ryans for the Niners, he's really going to bring the heart out of this kid, and I feel like he's going to be running like a bat out of hell.
Now, just for transparency, Gary and I were in between here. Gary had him 15. I had him 17. So, James, you're even a little bit lower than all of us on here, 27th. So, I don't have your full set of rankings up here in front of me, but clearly there were other sort of edge defensive end guys you liked over him. Anything in particular that you didn't like about him or his situation, or are there just other guys that you liked more ahead of him?
Yeah, it's not so much on Drake Jackson as it is just who I liked ahead of him. I did have Josh Paschal and Sam Williams ahead, which I think are two kind of borderline players, if not guys typically ranked below him. And the reason I like Paschal is I think he has just more opportunity than Drake Jackson does. I get that Drake Jackson's relatively a stud coming out of college, so to speak, as Josh Paschal's a little bit more quiet. But Paschal's got all of that opportunity in the world to go and take, and he's going to give me that higher floor, whereas I think Jackson has a higher miss probability, and that's why I lean Paschal. There's a difference of 4 people in my rankings, so if you want to go with Jackson and you want that little bit higher of a variance, go right ahead. I'm not going to say anything negative about it because we are talking about a lower tier of these rookies. I've got him at 27th, but really my 14th through 32nd are all relatively the same tier, and I just have him a little bit lower than those. Like Sam Williams, he should slide right into Randall Gregory's spot, and I think that could be a very, very lucrative position in terms of immediate investment and immediate reward and possibly cashing out early on a player if you so choose. Whereas I think Jackson's just going to be someone you have to wait, and I know we're talking Dynasty here, and I just don't like to wait. I don't really care whatever format it is. I want to get my reward right away. And I just don't want to invest early when I think that I'm going to have to wait a while to find out whether or not I've succeeded.
All right, Gary, who's the winner?
I mean, kind of weighing it in there. Both of them are pretty convincing at it. It's hard for me not to go with both of what they said. I mean, it's deep. So I'm out on this one, man. I ain't doing it. Go ahead.
I figured you weren't going to. That's all right. No. Is that a kid laughing, or is that another Gary sound effect?
Yeah, that was my kid. Sorry.
No, I know that's fine.
Wait a minute, I'll find some.
5 of them running around here too. I didn't know if Gary just had a laughing sound effect or what he was trying to put on there. So no problem. We're going to move on here to our next sort of.
My cat's in heat.
Ranking, and it's yeah. Don't have cats fighting on there as a sound effect. That
right.
gets scary. James, now we're sort of flip-flopping here where we had this in that. I know this was a big name that was brought up, Gary and Mace on the show on Thursday in the comments. So I'm sure that he was discussed a little bit, even though he wasn't in the top 16. Channing Tindall, the, I believe, 3rd round linebacker out of Georgia, going to the Miami Dolphins. James, I guess with this, I know it's Dynasty, but are you thinking that he's going to end up starting this year and gives you that sort of immediate value you were just talking about?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I'm leaning on. I think that he's going to find himself in that rotation sooner rather than later, which is why he's at the tippy top of that lower tier, like I said, from 14 onward, as he slots in right at 14th. I think that defense should be giving us quality rewards this year, whereas last year they were in more of a transitional phase where we saw a lot of young names and we liked them, but they weren't necessarily producing. And I think Tindall's going to slide right in and really get a lot of playing time and kind of show us his rewards. Of course, I could be wrong like anyone else, and he could slot down further down on this tier, but I like him. I like him a lot, and he's the type of variance that I'm trying to look and grab. So that's why he's 10 slots higher than what Mace has.
So, Mace, do you think it's going to take longer for him to get acclimated, or you just don't like that sort of linebacking core position in Miami, even if he were to start?
So at first I was kind of questioning his ability, and then I kind of found an Easter egg. Landon Roberts last year had 19 missed tackles. If he doesn't clean that up or show signs of it in camp, then yeah, like James said, he could definitely run away with the position. Either way, I feel like he's going to be in that rotation at first. And if he shows any sign, why wouldn't you give him the nod? So, yeah, I'm insanely low on him, but it was also one of those tier things, so I just put him at the end of the tier. So if he ends up starting, I'd put him above like a guy like Troy Anderson just because of what he can do, because I feel like Anderson's going to be sitting for you in like a dynasty league. So kind of a mishap on my part, but I'm glad I ended up kind of finding that. So yeah, I would go with James more so.
You're right in the middle again, Gary. I mean,
you're making getting defensive like lame, man.
Sorry, my bad.
I'm just messing with you, man. I mean, that's what happens, I mean, there's some of these people that have slid up and down my board as we've gone over these shows. I mean, things have changed, and things come to light. So I don't know how it can't be in an evolving situation. That's why we do this bottom 32 and do it by consensus. Anyhow. I'm going. I mean, he's done folded. I mean, I had him 17th.
Yep.
I tried to get him. I almost wanted to move him up a little bit here. But the fact of the matter is that the positional who I had above them in the top 16, you're going to have to go watch it, folks, or look at it here in a little bit. I had trouble. He could have probably slid right inside that top 16, but I mean, I was kind of stuck right there. I do like him. They do need to move on from Roberts, and they also do need to move on from Baker. So, I mean, I know he's a big playmaker. Even a Buckeye, I just can't do it, man. I just can't do it. I don't think he's that good on the field. So I like his upside. That's for sure.
I don't know that this is getting defensive, but I don't think they're moving on from Baker. They just gave him a large contract. And
I know.
I said coverage,
right.
In today's NFL, even if it doesn't necessarily translate for us on IDP, which is what we really care about for this, with what he does in coverage for them, the way the league is moving, especially got a team like Buffalo there. The Jets have improved their passing attack. I think that they're going to want a linebacker like that and a guy to sort of be a leader in that linebacking core. And I think Baker's going to be there for a considerable amount of time left. So,
yay.
Well, you don't have to draft him, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't like. I mean, anybody that's listened to me for the last whatever I about crap my pants when they gave him that contract. I was like, really? I never draft him. I don't touch him.
Jerome Baker or your agents, if you're listening, the IDP tipsters' views do not represent the rest of our views or the views of GridironRatings.com. All right, moving on. Leo Chenal. So this is, again, we're moving to the back half here, but I think again, third round linebacker. I'm getting my rounds a little bit mixed in my head, but out of Wisconsin, going to that young linebacking core where they have Bolton and Willie Gay already. James, moving down here, of course, 20th overall, and you had him at 20th. Do you think he ends up getting a starting job this year?
It's tough to say. I think he's not. Yeah, I'm going to say no. I'll say no. It's tough to be the guy with him in the higher in the rankings, and then also say, I don't think he's going to get the starting job necessarily. I think it's Willie Gay's got another year out there to truly prove himself, and I don't think Chenal is going to be in there without any sort of injury or any sort of massive disappointing performance, which I don't expect. So I think he's going to be getting plenty of reps, but he's not going to be the starter. He's not going to be the guy eating any sort of volume.
And I just want to throw this out here. So he is similar to me to a linebacker drafted a couple of years ago by the Saints and Zach Bond. They both played at the same school. They both sort of came on late and got drafted, in the second day of the draft, I think. And Bond has just showed absolutely nothing. Now they're not the same player. They're in different situations and all that. And sometimes you get that sort of stuff stuck in your head when you see that. And it's like, what do I really think is going to happen with him? So I have a little bit of that going on when I see him. I love the player, but up in Wisconsin here, of course, people were talking about him all the time around draft time once he got drafted, but I just couldn't get that out of my head because I invested probably too much in Zach Bond when he came up because I loved what I saw in college and loved the landing spot, and it's just been since. But anyway, Mace, how are you feeling about Leo? You're at the back part of your 32.
Yeah, I feel like Kansas City was looking at their draft. They also drafted a guy, Mike Rose, out of Iowa State. I think they're looking for a type of player, and I think they're going to see which of the two guys is it. They're both bigger, thick guys, if you will, and they play big. The thing I like most about Leo Chenal is I noticed that he's very meticulous in what he picks, but when he does pick, he attacks. And sometimes it can be to his downfall. He'll overshoot, he'll overrun stuff, he gets lost in the sauce. But if he meets you head-to-head, it's not going to be good for you. So he has potential, yeah, but just seeing the draft of Mike Rose also just kind of worried me that he wouldn't be in the rotation or he might not get the start this year, as James was saying. So that's kind of why I put him back.
Their linebacking core, and we'll see what happens here. Nik Bolton certainly came out earlier than people thought last year and just did amazing for him. But that linebacking core has been a mess for fantasy to try to find someone that you like out of it. They had Anthony Hitchens there for a while, and he was useful, but he was not spectacular. And just, Gary, how do you feel about this? I mean, anyone besides Bolton there really interest you at all?
I'm down there right next to with Mace. I mean, I'm right down there at 28th. when is where I put him. But it's a terrible mess, just like you just said, Kraig. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason each from game to game a lot. Now I know Bolton really was catching on, so hopefully somebody really emerges and produces as at least one consistent guy like Bolton did last year. But Chenal is probably just going to get in there with Gay. I know Gay hasn't quite lived up to his draft stock and hype and everything else, but you still can't discount him. Either way, whatever he earns, I don't think it's going to be that Bolton's going to be the one that's getting all the snaps. There goes to be a rotation between Gay and Chenal for a while. I mean, these are all very young players.
Yeah, they have a very young linebacking core, so it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out here.
Not to mention what Mace said about everybody else they have. Rotation hell, folks.
Speaking of the name that we had before, that Arnold Ebiketie, I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. But we talked to him a little bit about a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about that sort of edge type of player and the complete lack of sacks that the Falcons have had in the past, 12, 10 years, something like that. But James, you got him here at 17, and I'm going to guess that it's something opportunity-based, but I'll let you take the floor with him.
Yeah, your guess is a very good hypothesis because it's correct. There is so much opportunity in Atlanta, and as we discussed in the previous weeks, just because there's opportunity that exists doesn't mean it's going to be seized upon. And Atlanta certainly hasn't had any sort of good edge rushers in forever. It's been John Abraham and nothing else. But at the same time, give me opportunity, give me draft capital. I'm never one to say, a player can't perform because he went to Team X. There's always a way to change that narrative. Kansas City never had a good quarterback until some guy named Patrick Mahomes, so they can easily find themselves a nice edge rusher if that's what Ebiketie. Wow,
Mr.
had a
E.
Gary moment right there. But if he has any sort of edge rushing ability, he's going to have an opportunity to show it. All of these rookies are going to get tons of playing time, and I have a very general philosophy, and it's a very strong philosophy, which is later in the draft, if I have playing time, I want it because I get to know whether or not my guy succeeded or not succeeded quickly, and I can move on and reuse that roster spot if he does fail. So give me these guys with playing time. Let me see what they can do, and then I can reassess in 365 days. So in the middle of my second round of IDP players at 17, lock me in, give me this. I love it, and Frank, I feel like he's a little bit too low nowadays. He could go up even higher because they haven't signed anyone. So, yeah, I love him.
Gary? Well, sorry, not. Well, we can go to you, Gary. Sure, why not? Want to say
and Mace?
Yeah, okay, so for me, on Sleeper, I like him, but on MFL, I think he's a linebacker. So depending on what his stats are first, I don't know. Right. But I actually traded up for Arnold E. I'm not going to butcher it. I'm sorry. Today in a draft in the 5th round, I traded up to get him. I, for some reason, just realized that he was starting. I don't know why, because looking at their roster right now, they need the help, and that's why they drafted the way that they did on defense. He's physical. He's got over 34-inch arms. He just has some balance issues, and he overshoots angles. But for a rookie, you kind of expect him to do that a little bit anyways. Nothing you can't coach up, I feel like. So, yeah, like James said, the opportunity's there, and if he shows the heart, he could probably take a hold of this defense and be a leader for years to come.
That defense in general, Gary, I don't know about you, but just scares me, especially talking about getting rid of Deion Jones. I mean, there'll be someone there that'll get tackles, and we're talking about Michael Walker a bit before, and you like him, and they get a couple other younger guys that they drafted or signed a couple later, and Sean Evans, guy in Tennessee, brought him in for a go around. But even the defensive line, it's just been like Grady Jarrett. And then once defense is just focused on him, even he wasn't that great for IDP purposes. Just been a lot of yuck on that Falcons defense. How are you feeling about it?
Well, I mean, James is convincing. I had it down there, and I've seen a lot of love from the IDP community out there on the guy. Yep. I just have my doubts. I'm like you. I'm the same way. I'm holding it against him about Atlanta. and I'm not convinced. I mean, he may. I think people are automatically penciling this guy in as the blindside, weak side rusher too. But they just got done signing. Who was it? The dude from Giants.
Lorenzo Carter.
Yeah. So I don't see them playing a rookie on the weak side over Lorenzo Carter. And I'm not 100%. I know the guy's a big beast. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't think that he's got exactly what some of these other guys have got. I just can't believe in it. I am actually going to bump up a little bit just based off of his position and such, and the idea, yes, he will be, but I'm still landing more in the middle of this because I believe I went 27th on him. So I wouldn't have any problem. Again, in this lower part of this tier, just so we're talking tiers, these tiers are kind of interchangeable, especially this range when you start hitting there, just like James said.
Well, we got one more big name to go over here as far as discrepancies. And Gary, it's going to be a lot easier for you. You got that one? Nik
Cross?
Yep, yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Mace.
Mace.
This isn't, I just meant the name. I was trying to have you say the name, yeah. This isn't a big difference. And again, with tiers, this is probably all relatively in the same sort of tier at the end here. But the 96th pick overall, the last non-compensatory pick of the third round, Indianapolis Colts took him out of Maryland. So, Mace, how you feeling about him with these later group of defensive backs?
I actually really like him a lot. I think you are going to have to wait for him to get a position, in Dynasty. He might be part of a 3-4 guy rotation, maybe, depending on what they do. I just liked what he did in the secondary at Maryland. He's calling everything out. He's rolling around. I've talked about it before. It's just he shows a lack of effort sometimes, and he needs that little heart check, I think, and he went to the right defense to do that. If he doesn't put up early, then they're going to kick him out. It's as simple as that. So I just feel like if he catches on quick, then he could be a good signing, especially in later rounds.
James, he's behind Kari Willis, Julian Blackman, and probably Rodney McLeod to start here. But long term, you think that he's going to be able to make a name for himself and become a starter there for the Colts?
I mean, I'm on the fence. Generally speaking, the Colts find a way to make starters that have, value. And he certainly has the ability to give us value. At the same time, they currently have plenty of those. So him breaking through that depth chart feels like it's more of a daunting task. And in general, when you've got players who have multiple people to run through in order to get to the top, they take longer and they also fail more, in my opinion. And that's why he's just towards the bottom of the tier. I've got nothing against him. He could perfectly step up and be the next Bob Sanders for all I know. But it's my same beat that I always hit, which is it's going to take a while to find out. And I don't want to sit and wait and find out. I want to find out sooner. So I'll invest my later round picks elsewhere unless he falls to me at a great deal.
I tell you, Gary, Bob Sanders, there's a name from a few years ago that
I
love.
How is
he
Bob?
Was healthy and he didn't last long because his body didn't hold up.
Oh, yeah, he was a beast, though, wasn't he?
No, when he played, he was awesome.
Yeah. Answer me this while I read you that. So was he the last actually really good safety to own off of the Colts? How long ago was that? I'm trying to think who's been there.
2010 was the last time he played for the Colts.
When?
2010.
He was last really relevant in 2007 when he won Defensive Player of the Year, and then he just got hurt, and that was that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I was trying to think who else has been there, who's been high producers at the safety position for the Colts. And consistent, been there. Even the starting strong safety guy, what's his name? Right now, he's had some injuries and stuff, so he's not like hit his ceiling. Yeah, I don't think he's hit his ceiling. But as far as Nik Cross, I mean, I was right in the middle of these guys again when it come to this. I was dead in the middle. I don't think that my needle moves up or down on this. It's just a basic fact. I mean, I hate to say it, but you got to look at that aspect, just like we was talking about with Atlanta and such. But when you got Darius Leonard, Okereke, or whatever his name, but sorry, Bobby, Buckner, Kenny Moore, Blackman, Willis, when you got those kind of guys on there, I mean, sure, Nick Cross could blow our minds, but there's not a lot of IDP meat there. And this is a young defense overall. A lot of these guys aren't going nowhere for a while. So, I'm going to leave him right there in between there. I think I had him like 24th or 25th.
The most
nobody moved my needle.
Fair enough. The most recent name that played well for the Colts that I can think of was Antoine Bethea.
Oh, yeah, right.
Had some years, but that wasn't even for, what he was there for and had good years. It looks like maybe 08 to 2013.
Yeah, I think he had a bunch of 100 tackle seasons. He was a pretty good stud who was very quiet about it.
Right.
Yeah. But besides him, I mean, you had Clayton Geethers there for a few years.
Bust.
Ron Landry, Mike Adams. I mean, guys that you've heard of, but you weren't going out of your way to go pick up.
Yeah, right. Something happened. They never, I don't know. They was just not on my radar over the last few years.
They took Malik Hooker, who just never did anything.
Willis, a little bit, Willis is on the radar now, but I mean, he's going to have to stay consistent.
Well, that's going to wrap up our Colts defensive back corner for the past 3 minutes here. But we're going to jump into this sort of final view. Look at day one here on the left and day two. Sort of essentially here what we got here. So, James, I'm going to throw it to you. Do you have any sort of final thoughts about things that you noticed between these rankings and looking over how different people ranked it, or things you would have done differently? Anything like that, sort of for your final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, my final thought's probably an obvious one, but it's also something I don't think we've mentioned, which is draft capital is king. It's always going to be king. You can love a player, you can think he's great, and if he slips to the second round, well, he slipped to the second round, and he's going to have first-rounders ahead of him. By and large, all of us who are doing this, ourselves included, are very much interested in how teams are going to use players, and the best evidence of that is how much draft capital they invest. So when you see guys who are high up there who, you go, I don't really like them that much, like Trayvon Walker, well, he still has that insane draft capital. So he can't fall out of the top 10. And that matters. It's a great predictor whether we want to admit it or not. And it's just something to always remember. It's less so on the defensive side of the ball than it is on the offensive side of the ball, but it doesn't mean it doesn't matter.
And Mace, I want to thank you for, coming on in the past, few such shows and going over all this stuff with us. How you kind of feeling about how this all shook out? Besides, I mean, personally, I always have a little bit of remorse when you look at your rankings, like, all right, I'm done. And then you see something like, I want to change that. It kind of feels like, from what you said, you're the same way when you're looking at these a couple days later. But how you feeling about it?
Well, it's hard for me, man, because I start off just in the offseason by looking at these guys during the regular season when they're playing, and you get a football love for them, like a guy like Nick Cross for me. So maybe he might be a little bit lower, and then you start to see him work out, and you're like, yeah, he's not going to be that efficient in Dynasty this year, blah, blah, blah. So there's always remorse that goes with it, and then we got to account for redraft and all the different types. So just to be able to come on here with you guys and talk, that was enough for me, man. 1,000 thank yous to you guys. Seriously, I love it.
Well, we hope you're back at some point. Got a kid on the way. Yeah,
almost here.
You're going to catch up with Kraig?
I wouldn't recommend trying to catch up to me, but that's his choice.
You like Philip Rivers or what?
So,
man.
No.
Yeah. All right.
I tell everyone I wanted 3, my wife wanted 5, and we compromised at 5. So
this is my 5th.
That's how it rolls, man. James, you're childless at the moment, right?
I am childless. I'm still engaging in the battle to remain childless. As I think Mace and Kraig are well aware, that's a losing battle, but I will not go down without a fight.
Yeah.
Crunching underwater.
Yeah. We'll wrap this up, folks. Thank you for joining us.
Before we go, though, Gary, we have a question.
Uh-oh. Cool.
Start 4 linebackers. What do you think about it? So that's what he has to start in the league. Kind of wants our overall thoughts on this group.
Yeah,
So,
I just want to be clear. There are no more set 'em and forget 'ems in the NFL anymore. I mean, even with shallower formats. But I mean, I'll try to rank them for you if I could possibly do that.
I'm going to read off the names
And
for
I'll
people
suggest
paying
you pick
attention here.
Dean.
We got Aziz Al-Shaair, Nik Bolton, Cody Barton, I would presume, Shaq Barrett, Rashawn Gary, Chandler Jones, and he drafted Nakobe Dean, Christian Harris, Channing Tindall.
I'd really like to know what the scoring format would be.
And it looks like that sort of edge position is sort of wrapped up, or at least some of them, into this linebacking group. And you guys got like Gary, Shaq Barrett, and Chandler Jones in here. So,
Right,
I mean, if you're still paying attention, Vic, and you want to let us know what your sort of scoring is, that'll probably help us out.
Yeah, I mean, as it sits right now, I'm going to look at it as a balanced format. You're sitting there on Barrett and Gary and Chandler Jones. That's actually, if it's a, edge rusher friendly, then there we have it. I like them. They would have the advantage, and then it would probably be Bolton and Algier. But if it's a tackle based, then I'm definitely looking at Bolton. I think Bolton has a better chance of repeating his season last year than Algier. Am I saying that right? Because of Greenlaw. So I'm assuming that's Cody Barton, inside linebacker.
I would think so, yeah.
I'm not sold there. So he falls in the last with each thing there. I also like Dean. Oh, yeah. I mean, he did all right with those, right? Dean.
I think so.
Yeah, I can give you my rankings. I'd go Bolton, Barrett, Jones, Gary, Barton, in that order, without any context as to what league format it is and how much edge rushers truly matter. That's a general lump sum overall assessment on what I think I'd go there. And I think they're all relatively close. You've got a pretty solid core. You don't have any elite guys, but you don't have any junk there either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would hope. I'm going to let Mace say something here real quick, but I would hope that this is really leaning the way this is. You could use some upgrades probably long term, especially Dynasty or something. I like Gary, of course, but I mean, you got Bolton, but I mean, it could stand just a little bit of an oof unless those edge rusher linebackers are really doing the thing for you. What you got, Mace?
Yeah, I think if Dean ends up panning out, that'd be good. But just looking at the state of your current roster, you're gonna have to go out and start this year. I personally would have liked to have at least got up and maybe gotten a guy, not Dean, someone that can come in and start. But you also have Harris and Tindall, so that could also work out for you as well. Yeah, like they were saying, not amazing, not horrible. You'll get through the year, bumps and bruises, but you'll make it.
I believe that's it. That's the last question we have, and we got no more further clarification. So thank you all for spending the time with us. Again, as always, thank you for the questions and the comments. You can find all of us on Twitter at our handles below if you have specific questions about our rankings for us specifically or in general, or any sort of questions. We'd love to field those. Make sure you're subscribed over at gridironratings.com, YouTube, and the website itself to get all the great content that is coming out in video format on YouTube. Of course, you got the Chop Shop, you got Rider Dynasty, you got the Thursday night IDP show, the second week.
Do not be modest there, Kraig. Kraig is very active on some couple of other pods, man. I want to hear you plug that, my man, because you deserve to do that. All right. I appreciate all the Gridiron ratings and getting defensive, you give us, but man, tell them about the paranormal. Come on. Or no, whoops.
So I have there's a Monday show. We didn't do it this week because of the holiday IDP show. It's IDP Heat Seekers over on rotoheat.com's YouTube. You can find me there. And then it's a pre-recorded show, but Fridays at noon Eastern, there's an episode of Player Normal Activity, because I'm a dad, of course, and I love dad jokes. It's a play off of Paranormal Activity, where the first half of the show we discuss player in the NFL, their fantasy relevance, whatever. And then the guest goes into any sort of paranormal.
Boy, that was long. I wasn't expecting that to be so long.
Yeah, well, you asked me to talk about it, so I don't generally talk about it. So,
really, folks, check them out. All right. Check all these guys out. There's a reason they're on here. Believe me.
Mace, why don't you let us know before we go where to find all of your great content too, since Gary had to go down that route.
At Cali King 49er17 on Twitter, idpguys.com for my IDP content. I got rankings on Fantasy Pros. And I wanted to give a quick shout to the IDP Guys IDP draft kit that just came out today. Consensus redraft rankings, sleepers, breakout, bust, rookie profiles, you name it. We got it. Come and get it. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Yeah, cool, man. Hey, Mace, anytime. And speaking of that, Thursday, we're going to be doing a Dynasty mock, and IDP founder, owner Nate Cheat is going to be joining us. A little bit of a reunion for me and him. And then Johnny the Greek, another IDP guy that is a really good friend of mine, is going to be joining us too. So you guys are going to be peppered. It's kind of hard not to. You reach out to people, and everybody's got IDP guy contributor next to his name. I swear, it seems like it. I was like, oh wow. All right. So, anyways, James.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and over at Gridiron Ratings. I'm very local here. I don't have many podcasts. I give all my devoted attention to Gary and this beautiful, beautiful place.
Hey.
So come find me, ask me questions, and my DMs are always open. Love to answer questions. In fact, that's kind of my favorite thing. I don't get a lot of pub for it, but I love being able to really dive into your league and give you league-specific answers. So if you want them, DM me. I'm ready to help.
And that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure you tune in the rest of the week when you get those notifications popping on to watch Rider Dynasty. That's Wednesdays, I believe, right? 8 Eastern.
Man, there's so much coming out right now out of our channel. I don't know. It's a flood, folks. Go check it out.
But that'll do us for tonight. Make sure you tune back in. Everybody have a great night, and we will see you later.
Thank you.